going through this, let's look at this message. It says, "Morning, students, as we head into blah 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 blah. Focus on. Um, there is a quiz too, which will take place when we resume classes, and here is the scope of the quiz: measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion." So this is just what I want to quickly go through with you, just the things that you're going to need, and also to answer the tutorial, because of course there's the tutorial 5 sheet as well. But here, the measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion, I want us to just quickly go through the concepts in those two, and there's not much to do on them, so it shouldn't be hard. Okay, now the thing of it is, first, I'm just going to give you formulas, all right? I'm just going to give you formulas of these two things, because here you can see that they said for ungrouped and for grouped data. So you need to know measures of central tendency for ungrouped data and for grouped data, and you need to know measures of dispersion for ungrouped data and for grouped data. So that is what we want to do. I showed you the message. Before that, I'm just going to quickly make you remember that when we did, if you go to I think it was week 3. Yes, the lectures in week 3. You are going to find at the bottom where you see some of the things that are going to be useful for us. And this is when we were talking about, when it was about creating a frequency table, okay, or we can say a frequency distribution. You're going to see it a lot of times, even in the papers and stuff. So we were talking about creating a frequency distribution, which is just a table, okay, where you had the intervals and the frequency. And in there are words that you would have learned. The first word, let me put the words that we would have learned. We have 4 words that have class in them. You should class with, okay? You should be able to get the class with. You should be able to get the class limits, okay? Class limits. You should be able to get the class boundaries, okay? And know what that means, and get the class boundaries. And finally, be able to get the class mark, which class mark is just the midpoint. So we have these 4 class whatevers to do. And for class width, this was just class width was equal to, we would say, range, which is maximum minus minimum, divided by k, which is number of intervals. This gave us class width, okay? Class width, which you can call CW, is range over k, where range is R. It is equal to max value, okay, in the data set, minus the minimum value. And here you'll be dealing with ungrouped data, but there are things that I want you to go with to start knowing. K is going to be the number of intervals, and you get it using Sturge's formula, where you say that K is going to be equal to 1 plus 3.322 log of the number of things. Here, this you would get, and this would help you to get range and k. Then you'd find class width by saying range over k. Now class limits, here you would need to know, for class limits, you'd have to know the lower class limit. So lower class limit, we can say LCL, which is lower class limit for first class, okay? This is just going to be equal to the minimum value. Then you will now say lower class limit. Once you have for the first class, you can get for any other class, for class 2, class 3, class 4. And you'll be just saying lower class limit for class 2, which is, we can say class J plus 1. It is going to be equal to the lower class limit of the previous class, which is just J, plus the class width. So this is going to be important. What are class limits? Class limits are those we say when we are doing the intervals. When you put a class, right, you say it starts from 13 and goes up to 20. So this is the lower class limit, this is the upper class limit. So lower class limits, you get them by saying, you get the first lower class limit. This will be the minimum value in your data set, okay? Minimum value in data set. Then to get the next lower class limit, for upper class limit will show you, but to get the lower class limit, you just say, to get to the next, you say plus class width. Then you get the next lower class limit. This is going to be the next lower class limit, okay? Then to get this one, you see that we'll be just saying minus 1. We subtract one thing from what will be the lower class limit, but to get this other lower class limit, you add class width. And if you add class width, it takes you to the next lower class limit. It takes you to the next lower class limit. So you must know that if you then add class width, you don't add class width and get upper class. No. You don't say lower class plus class. Some people would like to say, if they know the class width, they say this is 13, they know class width is 5. They say 13 plus 5 and they say this is 18. No. you'd say 13 plus 5 and get 18 here. Then you'd say 1 less than 18 would be 17. So this would be up to 17. That is what you do with class limits. So class limits, you need to know the very first one, the minimum one. The lower class limit for the first, it is the minimum value. Then for all the other ones, you'll be just adding class width to get the lower class limits. Then for class boundaries now, for class boundaries, we'll be saying that first you must know how to get the class boundary. Class boundary is just going to be equal to the upper class limit of class J plus the lower class limit of the next one, J plus 1, and you divide by 2. So it's the average of those. Upper class limit of one of the classes plus the lower class limit of the next one, then you divide by 2. Then you get the class boundary. Okay, you get the class boundary, and this you only need to get the first one. Once you have the class boundary for the first, remember this will give you the upper class boundary. So we can actually just say this is the upper class boundary, because the class boundary, you'll be getting the upper class boundary. So you'll be getting that upper class boundary. Now to get the other ones, you can now just start to say upper class boundary of the next, to say I'm going to get the upper class boundary of class J plus 1. It is just going to be the upper class boundary or class of class J plus the class width. Okay, this helps you to get the upper class boundary of the next. Then what you must know is just put this, that the lower class boundary of class J plus 1 is equal to the upper class boundary of class J. So lower class boundaries, we don't need to look for them or calculate them. You just take the value which was the upper class boundary on the step before, and you make the lower class boundary of the next step. But the upper class boundary, you get it by saying upper class boundary of class J plus the class width. Okay, you get only the first one. Then start adding class width to get all the other upper class boundaries. Then to get the lower class boundaries, just do the upper class boundary of the one before. I know it sounds like a whole lot of stuff here because it's not being put as in practice, but here's the last one. We are going to do with questions over, all right? But I want you to know that this is not even hard. This is not even hard. The last one is going to be class mark. It's just the midpoint. So to get the class mark, you're going to see it as W. Okay, W, your class mark. This is just going to be the lower class limit or lower class boundary, whatever you want. You can use the limits or the boundary. Remember, class limits and class boundaries are not the same. You can use class limits or class boundaries to get this one. You'll be saying lower class limit of J plus the upper class limit of still the same class J divided by 2. You get the midpoint. Okay, midpoint. You can say the lower class boundary. You can that class mark, eh? You can say the lower class boundary of class J plus the upper class boundary of the same class divided by 2. Then you have the midpoint or the class mark. So class mark just means midpoint. Don't forget, these are some of the things. Then we are now going to look at the measures of central tendency and the measures of dispersion, which they wanted you to know. But some of them have words like class boundary. That's why I wanted you to see this, okay? Of course, with practice, of course, doing questions, this will all make sense. It's not that hard, all right? Goodbye for now. We'll meet in the next video where we are going to start with the measures of central tendency. We do the measures of dispersion, and we would be done.